On the healthcare thing.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was supposed to go you up there. Go ahead.
Well, on the healthcare issue.
About activist judges since 1937.
Well, the Supreme Court, as I understand it, is only allowed to hear a case once it's brought to them. They're not there. I mean, everybody thinks it's a balance of power, but there's not. They can't just go ahead and take a bill and say, we want to review this. We think
Right.
there's some constitutional issues here. That's where I think we fall flat on our face. That ought to be one of the jobs and responsibilities of that body. Otherwise, it's left up to the citizens, maybe the attorneys general, whatever, to actually bring a case in front of the court, and then they decide whether or not they want to listen to it. And it takes forever for that to happen. Meanwhile, the law's in place, the effects are already felt, and certainly the American people feel the effects of all of that, which I think is wrong.
Should be a congressional rule. It should be a senatorial rule that you consult the Constitution. I'm sorry for jumping in here, but you just make perfect sense to me.
Chuck has had his hand up here, and then I'm going to come back to you.
I'll change the subject. I just want to make a statement that back when I was a stockbroker many years ago, stock brokerage firms and banks were entirely separate. And now, since they've merged, everybody thinks of these brokerage firms as banks, and banks are getting a bad rap. We all know that it was Barney Frank and Chris Dodd that forced the banks to make bad loans, and then the brokerage firm part of it created these derivatives to be sold and sold and sold. So the banks were forced to do it. They didn't do it, they didn't have a problem. So they gave these loans, and that's when we have our housing problem we had. Now, apparently, we're doing it over again. We're forcing the banks to do the same thing again, and that's not the way it should be. I mean, we got to realize that the liberals we can't let them keep on giving loans to people that can't afford it. We're going to see that's my statement. Now, my question is this, though. My question is that on the health care, the right Republicans are getting a bad rap because supposedly we don't have ideas to present to the health care plan. I know it's not true. There's been numerous congressmen and senators that have given ideas on how to do a health care plan. But with the media against us, we don't hear that. Now, Obama's going to have this get-together, which isn't going to help the Republicans, even if they do go to it. But we got to get that message out that we do have a plan and that it's better than what they have. And I would just ask, is there any group or any way that we're getting that done?
Yeah, that's a great comment, by the way. That's going to be the one asset of the summit, having it televised, as the public is going to get to see the Republican leadership, because it's only, I think, 3 House members. It'll be Boehner, Eric Cantor, and maybe Mike Pence, and those are going to be the only 3 from the House there. But you will see a unified plan between House and Senate as the alternative. So the people will get to see that, thankfully, because of the summit, because otherwise the press, as you mentioned, ignores that. A few weeks ago, the House Republican had its annual retreat or conference, whatever you want to call it, and the president spoke to us. And we had the same theme, Chuck. It's like, we're tired of being called the party of no. In every one of these, we've had a limited government, a heck of a lot less spending, more free market approaches that we thought were more effective. And the president's reply to that was, yes, I've seen your bills, I've even read your bills, which I'm not sure, but that he, and then even said, well, and we've even taken some of those ideas and put it into bills. And so we actually have now, the president recognized that we do have alternatives, despite the press not wanting to cover those. So that we just got to push harder, but that may be an opportunity in that summit coming up to to show that there is a viable alternative. I wish my Sue bill, the alternative I wrote would be it, which just recreates the Federal Employees Act and allows people to jump into it, because it'll be a lot lower. It's individual, and the bill's written so your employers get the same tax advantages of having it a business expense if they want to pay your premiums. And by the way, there'd be zero cost to the taxpayer. So, the blackjack.
Yes, Lee, I appreciate you allowing us to have this town hall meeting. It's really important. I'm representing myself as a disabled veteran, and I come before you because I really appreciate all the work you've been doing for us. Really, really appreciate it as far as getting health care finally, getting financed and stuff like that on a continuous basis. Really appreciate that. But there's an issue that I know that I've heard from other veterans and stuff that I've talked to, and we're concerned about how you're limiting us in connecting us to Social Security as far as pay raises and cost of living and stuff like that, and why that is the way that is. I mean, I don't see that as productive for us as far as continuing to feed our families and stuff like that. And we're getting blocked just because we're connected to Social Security. I don't see how Social Security and disabled veterans match up as far as those two types of pay scales and pay systems and stuff like that. To where, active duty, they continually get raises on a continuous basis, stuff like that. I understand why, because I was active duty. But I don't see how that can't be also instituted for all the disabled veterans and stuff like that. And now we're not going to get a raise for 2-3 years. Yeah. I don't get that. That to me, that's not fair. I'd rather have y'all go back into committee every year and fight for us to get a raise every year in a percentage-wise, which you were doing for the last few years. I'd like that, discussed out as why that's happening, and then
I'm going to answer the question in a factual, not a political. But you asked how that happens.
Is part of the cost problem, from what I can tell, is I'm a college student and I already have $1,000 in debt because of health care, because I realize emergency room is more expensive than the top here. But now we use our insurance to cover everything, unlike we do with any other kind of insurance. Like, we don't expect our car insurance to pay for a new battery or something like that. Shouldn't health care be the same way, where we pay for our own maintenance, checkups, stuff like that, instead of dealing with making an insurance company pay for general maintenance?
Yeah. Well, those are all things that we should be debating right now. Not who's going to be in control of the dollar, but how do we reduce those costs, and what's covered and what's not. That's legitimate discussion to have. I understand the analogy. Healthcare, prevention is also a key component here, and a strict analysis of that analogy would say you don't do anything to prevent the car from going down. Anyway, yeah, up in the back.
Yeah, this sort of goes on what you just touched on there. I think there is a general perception in America today where folks are concerned about how things are being done in Washington. Maybe it wasn't important for the past few decades, but now it seems to be important. My particular concern is I don't understand how the legislation of the laws that are being put forth today in the House or the Senate through the President, how these seemingly unconstitutional laws are being passed. I find it very upsetting, and I wanted to know what your thought would be if, as a way to appease how Americans are upset about that now, citing what amendment in the Constitution this particular bill applies to and why. If we understood that better, maybe we wouldn't be so angry and annoyed.
That's a good idea.
Very, very, very fair question. And, the blunt answer is, it's not in the Constitution. It's not an enumerated power. Now, Mike, the person that would want to debate you
Very
on
good
that
question.
would say you have to look at the Supreme Court decisions.
Well, That's another problem.
we get into that, and that then drives a discussion.